I'm Hazel, 32 years old, and until last week, I thought I was an essential part of my sister Sophia's wedding. I'd spent months helping plan her perfect day, from venue tours to menu tastings. Then came those crushing words delivered with a smirk I'll never forget. "We all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding," my mom said. "Good to know," I replied. Transferred the $8,600 honeymoon fund back to my account, and canceled the flights I booked in her name. By morning, I had 28 missed calls and one message that changed everything. If you're watching this and have ever felt betrayed by family, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe to join me for what happened next in this wedding nightmare. My life in Chicago had been going well before all this drama erupted. As a financial advisor at one of the city's top firms, I'd built a successful career helping others secure their futures. The irony isn't lost on me that I couldn't secure my own place at my sister's wedding despite funding a significant portion of it. Getting to where I am wasn't easy. I worked my way through Northwestern University, often juggling 2 part-time jobs while maintaining my GPA. My family wasn't poor, but after my parents' divorce when I was 16, money became tight. Dad tried his best, but Mom seemed determined to maintain a lifestyle she could no longer afford. Sophia and I grew exceptionally close during those turbulent years. Being 4 years younger, she often looked to me for stability when our parents were busy fighting over who would take what from their marriage. I remember many nights spent in our shared bedroom, promising her that everything would be okay while listening to shouting matches downstairs. No matter what happens with Mom and Dad, we'll always have each other, I used to tell her as I braided her hair before school. She would nod solemnly, her blue eyes wide with trust. After the divorce finalized, our mother Janet changed. The bitterness festered, and she became increasingly materialistic, perhaps trying to fill the void left by the dissolution of her marriage. Designer clothes, luxury cars she could barely afford, and constant complaints about how Dad had robbed her of the life she deserved. She expected Sophia and me to share her resentment, but we maintained a relationship with our father despite her disapproval. When Sophia met Thomas 3 years ago, I was thrilled for her. He seemed kind, ambitious, and genuinely in love with my sister. His family background was significantly wealthier than ours, something that initially intimidated Sophia, but which she eventually adjusted to. What I didn't anticipate was how my sister would begin to change once she became integrated into Thomas's social circle. Thomas's parents, Gerald and Eleanor, were old money with connections throughout Chicago's elite social circles. They lived in a mansion in the Gold Coast neighborhood and spent summers at their lake house in Michigan. Their approval meant everything to Thomas, and by extension, began to mean everything to Sophia. The first time I noticed the shift was at a dinner celebrating their engagement. Eleanor mentioned how quaint it was that Sophia had attended a state university. My sister, who had always been proud of her education and achievements, laughed nervously and made a self-deprecating joke about marrying up. The Sophia I knew would have proudly defended her accomplishments. When the wedding planning began, I was ecstatic to be part of it. Sophia asked me to be her maid of honor in a sweet moment over brunch, presenting me with a small gift box containing a bracelet inscribed with "Sisters by Blood, Friends by Choice." "I couldn't imagine this journey without you, Hazel," she said, tears in her eyes. "You've always been there for me, and I want you by my side on the most important day of my life." The honeymoon was my gift to them. Given my financial stability, I wanted to contribute something significant. I set aside $8,600 to send them on a dream trip to Bali, spending weeks researching the perfect resorts, scheduling romantic excursions, and arranging for special surprises throughout their trip. I even booked first-class flights, wanting to give Sophia the luxury experience she'd always dreamed about but never thought she could afford. The first planning meeting should have been a warning sign. We gathered at Eleanor's house, surrounded by wedding magazines and champagne. Mom arrived dressed more formally than necessary, clearly trying to impress Thomas's parents. "Janet, that's a lovely dress," Eleanor commented. "Is it from the new Nordstrom collection?" "Yes, I simply had to have it," Mom lied. I recognized it from a discount store she frequented but presented as high-end. Throughout the meeting, my suggestions were politely acknowledged, then promptly ignored. When I recommended a photographer I knew who did stunning work at reasonable rates, Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. "We've already secured Preston Davis. He photographed the governor's daughter's wedding last year." Mom nodded enthusiastically. "Oh yes, much better choice. We want only the best for Sophia." I caught my sister's eye, expecting her usual conspiratorial smile at our mother's social climbing, but Sophia only looked away and changed the subject. Despite these small tensions, I continued pouring my heart into wedding preparations and finalizing the honeymoon details. I spent hours on the phone with the resort manager in Bali, ensuring every detail would be perfect. I even arranged for local artisans to create personalized gifts waiting in their suite upon arrival. The total came to exactly $8,600. A significant amount that represented months of saving, but worth it for my sister's happiness. "You're too generous," my friend Caroline told me over coffee. "Are you sure they appreciate what you're doing?" Of course, I insisted. Sophia and I have always been there for each other. This is her big moment. Little did I know how wrong I was. The first major crack in our relationship appeared when Sophia went dress shopping without me. We had talked for years about someday helping each other find the perfect wedding dress. It was supposed to be a special sister moment. Instead, I saw the photos on Instagram: Sophia, Mom, Eleanor, and Thomas's sister Catherine all toasting with champagne at Chicago's most exclusive bridal boutique. My invitation had apparently gotten lost. When I texted Sophia about it, her response was delayed by hours. "Sorry, it was a last-minute thing. Eleanor's friend owns the boutique and could only fit us in yesterday." But the carefully staged photos told a different story. This wasn't impromptu. They had planned it without me. The bridesmaids' dresses were another surprise. Traditionally, the maid of honor helps select them. But I received a terse email with a link to order a specific gown in dusty rose along with instructions for required alterations. When I called Sophia to ask about it, she seemed distracted. Eleanor found a perfect color scheme that complements the venue. Everyone loved the dresses, so we went ahead and chose them. "Everyone except me," I said quietly. "Don't make this difficult." "Hazel, there's so much to organize." My text messages to Sophia grew increasingly unanswered or received brief responses hours later. Our weekly sister brunches were canceled 3 times in a row due to wedding planning emergencies that somehow required Eleanor's presence, but not mine. One evening, I stopped by Mom's house to drop off some old family photos Sophia had requested for a wedding slideshow. Through the partially open dining room window, I heard voices and paused. The Davis wedding last summer was absolutely ruined by inappropriate family members, Eleanor was saying. The photographs looked disjointed with certain people not matching the overall aesthetic. "I completely understand your concerns," my mother replied in that sycophantic tone she reserved for people she wanted to impress. Appropriate appearances are essential for such an important social event. I couldn't hear who they were talking about, but a sinking feeling in my stomach suggested it might be me. Still, I dismissed it as paranoia. Family wouldn't do that to each other, would they? A dinner with Thomas's extended family amplified my concerns. Seated far from Sophia at a long table, I tried to engage in conversation with Thomas's cousins who seemed to speak exclusively about private schools, country clubs, and vacation properties. "And what about you, Hazel? Where do you summer?" one cousin asked. "I usually summer in my apartment with the air conditioning on full blast," I joked. The silence that followed was deafening. Later, I overheard Eleanor murmuring to Thomas, "She certainly is. Different from Sophia, isn't she? Your bride has adapted so beautifully to our world. The bridal shower was perhaps the most painful precursor to what was coming. I had started planning it months in advance, selecting a venue, designing invitations, and organizing games that would celebrate Sophia's personality and our shared memories. 2 weeks before the date, Mom called. Eleanor and I have decided to move the shower to the Chicago Yacht Club. Her membership gives us access to the grand ballroom. But I've already put deposits down on the garden venue, I protested. This will be much more appropriate, Mom insisted. Eleanor has connections with a wonderful caterer and decorator. The invitation to the new shower arrived suspiciously late, just 3 days before the event. When I arrived at the yacht club, I found myself seated at a table with distant acquaintances while Mom, Sophia, and Eleanor's friends occupied the main table. My carefully selected gift, a scrapbook documenting Sophia and my relationship throughout the years alongside a certificate for the honeymoon extras, was opened last and acknowledged with only a brief thanks. Throughout all this, I kept working on the honeymoon arrangements, hoping that despite the growing distance, this generous gift would remind Sophia of our bond. I finalized the private sunset cruise, the couple's massage on the beach, and the special dinner under the stars. Dad noticed my distress during one of our weekly dinners. Unlike Mom, he had maintained his down-to-earth nature after the divorce, living modestly in a small but comfortable condo. You seem troubled, sweetheart, he said, his forehead creased with concern. Is everything okay with the wedding planning? I tried to brush it off, but Dad had always been perceptive. Hazel, you've always been the one giving in that relationship. Sometimes I worry Sophia takes advantage of your generosity. She's just caught up in wedding stress, I defended, though with less conviction than before. Just remember that you deserve respect too, he said, squeezing my hand. Don't let anyone make you feel less than, even family. The final blow came when I accidentally discovered a group chat dedicated to wedding planning that included Mom, Sophia, Eleanor, Thomas, and several bridesmaids. I was scrolling through Sophia's phone looking for a photo she wanted me to print when notifications from the chat appeared. Hundreds of messages had been exchanged discussing details I should have been involved in as maid of honor. They had effectively created a parallel planning committee that excluded me while maintaining the facade that I was still involved. Still, I kept telling myself it was all a misunderstanding. That my sister wouldn't deliberately push me aside. That my mother wouldn't participate in my exclusion. I was wrong on all counts. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled at Aurelia, one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. I arrived early, hoping to help with any last-minute arrangements and perhaps reconnect with Sophia before the event. The venue was stunning, with crystal chandeliers, white orchid centerpieces, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's skyline. A server directed me to a private room where final preparations were underway. As I approached, I heard voices from inside, including my mother's distinctive laugh, the one she used when trying to impress people. I slowed my steps, an uneasy feeling settling in my stomach. The seating arrangement is perfect now, Eleanor was saying. The head table will photograph beautifully with everyone coordinating so well. I'm so relieved we settled the Hazel situation, Mom replied, her voice dropping slightly but still audible from my position just outside the door. It was becoming awkward. I froze, my hand on the door handle. Honestly, Janet. Eleanor continued, you made the right decision. Hazel just doesn't match the wedding aesthetic we've created. The height difference alone would throw off the visual balance in photos. Not to mention her more robust figure compared to the other bridesmaids. And that unusual red hair, Thomas's mother added with a sigh. It would pull focus in every shot. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My appearance was being discussed like a decorating problem. Sophia, darling, you understand it's for the best, Eleanor added. Your sister can attend as a guest, of course. Just not in the wedding party. There was a pause before my sister's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it, responded, if everyone thinks it's best? That was the moment my heart truly broke. Not a defense, not a protest, just quiet acquiescence. I pushed the door open, unable to stand in the hallway any longer. The conversation stopped abruptly as all eyes turned to me. Mom's face registered shock, then quickly composed itself into something colder. Sophia looked down at her hands. Eleanor merely sipped her wine. Hazel, Mom recovered first. We didn't expect you yet. Clearly, I said, my voice remarkably steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. I was hoping to help with preparations, but it sounds like you've already prepared quite thoroughly, including planning my removal from the wedding party. The silence that followed was excruciating. Thomas's mother had the decency to look slightly embarrassed at being caught, though not at what she'd said. Mom, however, lifted her chin defiantly. Don't be dramatic, Hazel. We were discussing what's best for the wedding photos. The wedding photos, I repeated slowly. Not what's best for Sophia. Not what's best for family relationships. The photos. These photos will be in albums and on walls for decades, Eleanor interjected as if explaining something obvious to a child. Cohesion is important. I looked directly at Sophia, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. Is this what you want, Sophia? After everything we've been through together? You want me removed from your wedding party because I might throw off the aesthetic? She finally looked up, her expression pained but resolute. The photos need to look consistent, Hazel. Everyone agrees. We've invested so much in making this wedding perfect. Everyone agrees. I echoed, the words hollow. That's when Mom delivered the line that would change everything between us. Looking me straight in the eyes with an unmistakable smirk, she said, We all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding, Hazel. The decision is final. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I felt a rushing in my ears and a tightness in my chest that made breathing difficult. The betrayal was so complete, so unexpected despite the warning signs, that it felt physical. Like a blow to the stomach. I see, I managed to say. My face felt strangely numb. Thank you for clarifying where I stand with this family. Don't be so sensitive, Mom snapped. This isn't about you. It's Sophia's special day. I looked around the room one last time, taking in Eleanor's smug expression, my mother's dismissive stance, and worst of all, my sister's averted gaze. The sister I'd comforted through nightmares, helped through heartbreaks, and supported through every challenge life had thrown at her couldn't even look me in the eye while breaking my heart. Congratulations on your wedding, Sophia, I said quietly. I hope the photos turn out perfectly. With as much dignity as I could muster, I turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind me. No dramatic slam, no tearful outburst. Just the quiet closing of a door that somehow felt like the end of a chapter in my life. The drive home passed in a blur. Traffic lights changed, cars moved around me. But I was operating on autopilot, my mind replaying those devastating words over and over again. We all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding. Not just Mom or Eleanor, but all. Including my sister. Including Sophia. By the time I reached my apartment, the shock was wearing off, leaving something harder and colder in its place. A resolve I hadn't known I possessed was forming, crystal clear and surprisingly calm. If I wasn't welcome at the wedding, perhaps my contribution to their honeymoon shouldn't be welcome either. The silence of my apartment enveloped me as I sat on my couch, still wearing the dress I'd chosen carefully for the rehearsal dinner. The soft ticking of the clock on my wall seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet space. Outside, Chicago continued its usual evening symphony of distant sirens, honking horns, and the rumble of the L train, but inside, everything was still. I wasn't crying. That surprised me. Instead, I felt an odd clarity settling over me like a thin layer of ice. For years, I had been the reliable one, the supportive one, the one who always gave more than she received. Tonight, something fundamental had shifted. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from Caroline. I hadn't told her I was leaving the rehearsal dinner early, but somehow she sensed something was wrong. Caroline had that kind of intuition, especially when it came to me. "Hey, what happened?" she asked immediately. "You were supposed to call me after the dinner with all the gossip." "They don't want me in the wedding," I said, the words sounding strange spoken aloud. "Not as maid of honor. Not as a bridesmaid. Not at all." "What? Who doesn't want you?" "Sophia. All of them. Mom, Sophia, Thomas's mother. Apparently, I don't fit the aesthetic they're going for." My laugh sounded brittle even to my own ears. "My hair is too red, I'm too tall, and I'm too robust for their perfect wedding photos. Are you fucking kidding me?" Caroline's outrage was immediate and validating. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." "What did Sophia say?" "Nothing. That's the worst part. She just sat there and let it happen." As I recounted the details to Caroline, the reality of the situation sank in deeper. I wasn't just hurt, I was angry. And beneath that anger was something else. The sudden awareness that I was still financing their honeymoon. "Wait," I interrupted Caroline's creative suggestions about where Eleanor could shove her aesthetic concerns. "The honeymoon? I'm still paying for their entire honeymoon. The one you've been planning for months? The one you've already paid for?" $8,600, I confirmed. Flights, resort, excursions, everything. There was a pregnant pause before Caroline spoke again. "What are you thinking, Hazel?" I moved to my laptop and opened my banking app. "I'm thinking that if I'm not welcome at the wedding, maybe my money isn't either." The next hour was spent methodically untangling the financial web I'd created for Sophia and Thomas's honeymoon. I started by logging into my accounts and transferring the remaining funds from the special savings account I'd labeled S&T Honeymoon back to my main account. The money earmarked for their spending cash and final excursion payments slid back into my possession with a few clicks. Next came the reservations. I called the resort in Bali, explaining that I needed to cancel the booking. The cancellation fee was painful but worth every penny. "May I ask why you're canceling, Miss Thompson?" the reservation manager asked. "Change of plans." I replied simply. No need to air family dirty laundry to strangers. The airline was next. The first-class tickets I'd splurged on were mostly refundable with a modest fee. As I confirmed the cancellation of Janet's ticket, a small part of me registered that I was burning bridges that might never be rebuilt. The larger part didn't care. With each cancellation, each reclaimed dollar, I felt a weight lifting. The resort couples massage, canceled. The private sunset cruise, canceled. The special dinner under the stars, canceled. All the little touches I'd arranged to make their honeymoon magical, systematically undone. I drafted an email explaining my actions, but didn't send it. They would discover what I'd done soon enough. And I wasn't ready to engage with their reactions. Let them wonder, just for a while, as the notifications from the resort and airline arrived in their inboxes. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in bed staring at my ceiling, replaying years of always being there for Sophia, for Mom, for everyone. The times I'd helped Sophia study for exams, the money I'd lent Mom when she overspent, the emotional support I'd provided through breakups and job losses and health scares. Had any of it mattered? Or had I always been the family member they tolerated rather than valued? Morning found me exhausted but resolute. I showered, dressed in my favorite outfit, and made myself a proper breakfast. Small acts of self-care felt important suddenly. A way of saying to myself what my family hadn't: "You matter." Dad called as I was washing my breakfast dishes. "I heard what happened," he said without preamble. "Your mother called me, trying to get me to talk some sense into you." I tensed. And I told her she was the one who needed sense talked into her. His voice was firm. "What they did was cruel, Hazel. You had every right to cancel that honeymoon." Relief flooded through me. At least one parent was still in my corner. "They're going to be angry," I warned him. "Let them be. Sometimes people need to face the consequences of their actions." There was a pause. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. It's been a long time coming. After talking with Dad, I set my phone to do not disturb and texted Lauren, another close friend, asking if she wanted to meet for lunch. I needed distraction and the company of people who genuinely cared about me. As I grabbed my purse to leave, I caught sight of the bracelet Sophia had given me when asking me to be her maid of honor. Sisters by blood, friends by choice. I placed it in my jewelry box and closed the lid firmly. Some choices, it seemed, were subject to change. The next morning, I woke to my phone vibrating continuously on my nightstand. When I finally checked it, I discovered 28 missed calls, 17 voicemails, and over 30 text messages. The fallout had begun. The messages started innocuously enough. Time-stamped from last night. From Sophia, 8:42 p.m. Hey, got a weird email from the resort in Bali. Something about a cancellation? Is everything okay with the booking? From Sophia, 9:17 p.m. Hazel. The airline just sent a cancellation notice too. What's going on? Please call me ASAP. From Mom, 9:34 p.m. Sophia is upset about some honeymoon issue. Fix it immediately. The tone changed dramatically as the night progressed. From Sophia, 10:13 p.m. I can't believe you canceled our honeymoon. Is this because of yesterday? That's incredibly petty. From Mom, 10:26 p.m. Your behavior is completely unacceptable. Call your sister right now. From Thomas, 10:58 p.m. Sophia is crying. Whatever issues you have with your family, taking it out on our honeymoon is beyond inappropriate. By midnight, the messages had escalated to threats. From Mom, 12:07 a.m. You promised that honeymoon to your sister. You can't legally withdraw a promised gift. We'll take legal action if necessary. From Eleanor, 12:35 a.m. This vindictive behavior only confirms we made the right decision about the wedding. Thomas's father is consulting our attorney. The voicemails were worse. Mom's voice shrill with anger. Sophia alternating between tears and accusations. Even Thomas's parents had called. Their aristocratic tones strained with barely contained fury. The most recent message was from Mom, left just 30 minutes ago. Hazel Elizabeth Thompson, you answer your phone right now. Your childish stunt has ruined everything. The honeymoon was your contribution to this wedding, and you had no right to cancel it. Fix this immediately or don't bother coming to the wedding at all. Not that you were wanted there anyway. The last line stung despite its pettiness, confirming everything I'd heard at the rehearsal dinner. I called Elizabeth, a friend who happened to be a lawyer, for a quick consultation. Can they actually sue me for canceling the honeymoon? I asked after explaining the situation. Not successfully, she assured me. A verbal promise of a gift doesn't constitute a legally binding contract, especially when no formal agreement was signed. They're bluffing. That was a relief, at least. I decided to turn my phone back off and take some time to process before responding to anyone. The barrage of accusations and threats had left me feeling drained, but also more certain that I'd made the right decision. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Mom standing in the hallway, arms crossed and face set in the determined expression I knew too well. I considered not answering, but eventually opened the door, keeping the security chain in place. What do you want, Mom? Don't play innocent, Hazel. You know exactly why I'm here. Her voice was cold. You're going to rebook that honeymoon today, or I'm coming in to take your credit card and do it myself. I almost laughed at the absurdity. That's not how credit cards work, Mom. And I'm not rebooking anything. Do you have any idea how much damage you've done? Eleanor and Gerald are furious. Thomas is talking about postponing the wedding. Is that what you wanted? To ruin your sister's happiness because you're jealous. Jealous. I repeated incredulously. I was excluded from my own sister's wedding for not being aesthetically pleasing enough. And you participated in that decision. What did you expect me to do? I expected you to be an adult and think about someone besides yourself for once. She tried to push the door open, but the chain held. "That's rich coming from you," I said, a lifetime of suppressed feelings suddenly finding voice. "I've spent my entire life thinking about everyone else. Helping Sophia through school, lending you money when you overspent, being the reliable one, the responsible one. And this is what I get in return? Being told I'm not welcome at a wedding because I might ruin the photos." Mom's expression flickered with something that might have been guilt before hardening again. "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I heard you all discussing it. The Hazel situation. Like I'm a problem to be solved rather than a person with feelings. You're being dramatic." "No. I'm finally being honest. And here's more honesty. I'm not rebooking that honeymoon. That money was a gift given out of love. And when you decided I wasn't worthy of being included in an important family event, you forfeited that gift." We stared at each other through the narrow opening of the door. Decades of complicated emotions flowing between us. Finally, Mom stepped back. "I always knew you were selfish, Hazel. This just proves it." She turned to leave but paused. "Don't bother coming to the wedding. You're not welcome anyway." "So I've been told," I replied, closing the door softly. The confrontation left me shaking but somehow stronger. For the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary with my mother and held firm. The mixture of grief and liberation was dizzying. While the majority of family messages were accusatory, I received surprising support from my cousins Jessica and Ashley, who reached out separately to express their shock at how I'd been treated. "That's seriously messed up," Jessica texted. "Aesthetic concerns? What is this, a photo shoot or a family celebration?" Ashley went further. "I'm considering not going myself after hearing how they treated you." Family doesn't do that to each other. Their support was a balm to my wounded heart, a reminder that not all family relationships were as broken as the ones currently imploding in my life. That evening, I made a decision that felt both petty and necessary for my healing. I booked myself a solo trip to Costa Rica, coincidentally scheduled during the same week as Sophia's wedding. If I wasn't welcome at the celebration, I would create my own joy elsewhere, on a beach far from Chicago and the family that had discarded me. As I confirmed the booking, a sense of liberation washed over me. For once, I was choosing myself. 3 days before the wedding, the family radio silence continued, broken only by occasional accusatory texts from Mom. I had settled into an uneasy peace with my decision, focusing on work and preparations for my solo trip. Then, unexpectedly, a message arrived from Catherine, Thomas's sister. "Can we meet for coffee? There's something you should know." I was hesitant, but curious. Catherine had always seemed different from the rest of Thomas's family, less concerned with appearances and social standing. We'd had a few pleasant conversations at engagement events before the wedding planning machine had kicked into high gear. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe near my office during lunch. Catherine arrived looking troubled, her usual confident demeanor subdued. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as we sat with our coffees. "I've been struggling with whether to tell you this, but after seeing how everything unfolded, I feel you deserve to know the truth." "What truth?" I asked warily. Catherine took a deep breath. "The decision to exclude you from the wedding wasn't really about aesthetics or photos. That was just the excuse they used." She looked down at her cup. "My parents found you, too working class. They thought you would embarrass them in front of their society friends with your normal job and lack of pedigree." The bluntness of her statement hit me like a physical blow. "Too working class," I repeated slowly. "It's disgusting, I know," Catherine said quickly. "I've been fighting with them about it for weeks. But they're paying for most of the wedding. And they leveraged that to get their way." "And my mother agreed to this?" Catherine nodded grimly. "Janet seemed to think that maintaining good relations with my parents was more important than standing up for you. They're covering the $60,000 venue fee and most of the catering costs." "And Sophia? Did she agree too?" Here, Catherine hesitated. Sophia was caught in the middle. She told me privately that she felt trapped. My parents made it clear that their financial support came with conditions. So she chose money over her sister. The confirmation hurt, even though I'd already suspected as much. It's more complicated than that, but essentially, yes. Catherine pulled out her phone. I have something you should see. It's a screenshot of the group chat where they discussed all this. I couldn't stay silent after seeing it. She handed me her phone, and there it was in black and white, a conversation between my mother, Eleanor, Gerald, Thomas, and Sophia discussing the Hazel problem. Eleanor, we need to address the Hazel situation before invitations go out. Gerald and I have concerns about her presence in the wedding party. Mom. What sort of concerns? Gerald, to be blunt, she doesn't fit the image we're trying to project. Our guests are expecting a certain level of sophistication. Thomas, I understand your concerns. But she's Sophia's sister. Eleanor, there are ways to include family without putting them front and center. She could do a reading or something similarly brief. Sophia. Hazel has already bought her bridesmaid dress though. Mom, if it's important to your in-laws, Sophia, I'm sure we can find another role for Hazel. The Harrison wedding was beautiful with family seated rather than standing up front. Sophia, I guess, if everyone thinks it's best. The conversation continued, becoming increasingly focused on how to manage me as if I were a problem rather than a person. My stomach churned as I scrolled through message after message of casual cruelty. I'm sorry, Catherine said as I handed back her phone. They're wrong, all of them. You deserved better. I took a moment to compose myself before responding. Thank you for showing me this. I suspected something like this, but seeing it confirmed is clarifying. What will you do now? Nothing, I said after a moment's consideration. I've already done what I needed to do by canceling the honeymoon. Now, I just need to focus on moving forward. Catherine nodded. For what it's worth. I think you're handling this with incredible grace. I'd have set something on fire by now. That made me smile despite everything. The day's not over yet. We parted with a brief hug. This unexpected ally providing comfort when I least expected it. The next day brought another surprise. Sophia, standing outside my apartment door when I returned from work. Can we talk? She asked. Her voice small. I let her in, maintaining an emotional distance that would have been impossible a week ago. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes and her normally perfect hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. Catherine told me she spoke with you, Sophia began, perching awkwardly on the edge of my couch. She did. I wanted to explain. What's there to explain, Sophia? The screenshot made everything pretty clear. She flinched. It wasn't how it looked. It looked like you chose your in-laws' money and approval over your relationship with me. I kept my voice level, determined not to show how deeply her betrayal had wounded me. They were going to pull all financial support, Hazel. $60,000 for the venue alone. We couldn't afford that ourselves. Then maybe you should have planned a wedding you could afford. Tears filled her eyes. That's easy for you to say. You've always been the practical one. This was supposed to be my dream wedding. And I was supposed to be your sister. For life. Not just when convenient. I shook my head, disappointment weighing heavily. We survived our parents' divorce together, Sophia. I held you while you cried. I helped you study for exams when you were struggling. I supported you through everything, and you threw me away for wedding photos and Eleanor's approval. I didn't throw you away. She protested weakly. You sat silently while Mom and Eleanor discussed me like I was a decorating problem. You didn't defend me, not once. The memory still stung sharply. And when I confronted you all, you couldn't even look me in the eye. Sophia's tears were flowing freely now. I'm sorry, Hazel. I got caught up in everything. The dress fittings and cake tastings and Eleanor's vision for the perfect society wedding. I lost sight of what really matters. Which is family. Real family. Not the kind that judges you for what you wear or where you work. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I miss you. I miss my sister. Part of me wanted to forgive her instantly, to wrap her in a hug and pretend none of this had happened. But the deeper, wiser part knew that would only enable more of the same behavior in the future. I miss my sister too, I said finally. The one who would never have let anyone push me out of her life for not being aesthetically pleasing enough. I don't know where that Sophia went. Can we fix this? She asked, hope threading through her voice. I don't know, I answered honestly. Some things once broken are never quite the same when glued back together. But I do know it won't be fixed by a tearful apology 3 days before your wedding. She nodded, accepting this hard truth. Will you come to the wedding? Please? I considered the question carefully. No, I said finally. I can't sit in that church and pretend to celebrate while knowing how everyone really feels about me. That would be self-betrayal. And I've had enough betrayal recently. Sophia didn't argue, perhaps understanding at last the magnitude of what had happened between us. She stood to leave, looking smaller and younger than I'd seen her in years. I hope your wedding is everything you wanted it to be, I said as she reached the door. And I hope it's worth what you sacrificed for it. She paused, hand on the doorknob. It won't be. Not without you there. After she left, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, turning over this conversation and all it revealed. There was a sad irony in Sophia finally recognizing my importance only after I'd been excluded. Sometimes people only value what they've lost. The wedding invitation still sat on my mantel, its gold embossed lettering gleaming in the afternoon light. With a decisive motion, I took it down and placed it in a drawer, out of sight. My decision was made. I would not attend. Instead, I confirmed my booking for Costa Rica, upgrading to an ocean view suite with the money that would have gone towards Sophia and Thomas's sunset cruise in Bali. For once, I would prioritize my own joy, my own healing. I slept better that night than I had in a week, the weight of indecision lifted from my shoulders. The morning of Sophia's wedding dawned bright and clear, the Chicago skyline crisp against a perfect blue sky. I didn't need to check social media to know that Eleanor was undoubtedly pronouncing it a sign that the weather was cooperating for her perfect society event. I was thousands of miles away in Costa Rica, sipping coffee on my private balcony as the Pacific Ocean stretched before me. The previous day's traveling had left me exhausted but exhilarated. This was my first completely solo vacation, an adventure undertaken entirely on my own terms. My phone remained blessedly silent. Dad had texted the night before to check that I'd arrived safely, expressing again his support for my decision. Jessica had sent a photo from the wedding rehearsal with the caption, "Missing you here. It's not the same without your sarcastic commentary." That had made me smile despite everything. Mom hadn't contacted me since our confrontation at my apartment door. Sophia had sent one final text before I boarded my flight. I understand why you won't be there tomorrow. I just want you to know I'll be thinking of you. I love you, Hayes. Always have, always will. Even when I've been too stupid to show it. It was the nickname that got me, the one she'd used since she was a toddler unable to pronounce Hazel properly. For a moment, I'd wavered in my resolve, imagining her getting ready without me. Facing the biggest day of her life, missing her older sister who had always been there for the important moments. But then I remembered the screenshot Catherine had shown me. The casual way they had all discussed removing me from the wedding as if I were an inconvenient piece of furniture. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too complete. So instead of helping my sister into her wedding gown, I was watching the sun rise over a foreign ocean, feeling both grief and liberation in equal measure. My trip became a journey of rediscovery. Without the constant obligation to be available for everyone else's needs, I found myself remembering interests and passions long set aside. I took a surfing lesson, something I'd always wanted to try but never made time for. I joined a night hike through the rainforest, marveling at bioluminescent fungi and nocturnal creatures. I spent an entire afternoon reading a novel without once checking my phone for messages needing my response. Meanwhile, through occasional updates from Dad and Jessica, I learned that the wedding had proceeded as planned, though with some last-minute adjustments after my honeymoon cancellation came to light. Instead of 2 weeks in Bali, Sophia and Thomas were now spending 4 days at a lake house owned by one of Thomas's cousins. Apparently, neither set of parents had stepped up to cover the cost of replacing my gift. Eleanor looked like she'd swallowed a lemon when Sophia announced the change in honeymoon plans. Jessica reported gleefully. All that talk about a dream wedding. And she couldn't even help with the honeymoon when it came down to it. There was a certain poetic justice in that which I couldn't help but appreciate. A week after the wedding, back in Chicago and settled into my normal routine, I received an unexpected email from Sophia. Attached was a photo of her and Thomas on their wedding day, looking genuinely happy despite the strained circumstances surrounding the event. The photographer managed to capture a few genuine moments among all the staged perfection, she wrote. I thought you might want to see that despite everything, there was real love there too. When you're ready, I'd like to talk. Really talk, not just apologize. I miss my sister. I didn't respond immediately, needing time to process my feelings. The wound was healing, but slowly, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to risk reopening it. 2 weeks later, Mom appeared at Sunday brunch with Dad, an unprecedented event since their divorce. She sat stiffly across from me, clearly uncomfortable but determined. Your father thinks I owe you an apology, she began, typical in her inability to simply own her actions. And after some reflection, I can see why you might feel hurt by what happened. It wasn't a real apology, but from Mom. It was significant. I nodded, acknowledging her effort without immediately absolving her. The wedding didn't turn out as I expected, she continued, twisting her napkin. Eleanor and Gerald have barely spoken to me since the honeymoon situation became public. Apparently, I didn't manage you properly. I'm not something to be managed, Mom. I'm your daughter. Her eyes met mine, and for perhaps the first time in years, she really looked at me. Yes, you are. And I haven't been the mother you deserved lately. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. We had a long way to go, but this small acknowledgement opened a door that had seemed permanently closed. Rebuilding with Sophia took longer. 6 months after the wedding, we finally met for lunch. Just the two of us. The conversation was awkward at first, both of us dancing around the elephant in the room until Sophia finally addressed it directly. I failed you, she said simply. I got caught up in the fantasy of being accepted by Thomas's family, of having the fairy tale wedding, and I forgot what really matters. And what's that? I asked, echoing our earlier conversation. You. Us. The sister who has always been there for me, even when I didn't deserve it. She reached for my hand across the table. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to earn back your trust, however long it takes. Healing isn't linear. There were good days and bad days, conversations that ended in tears and others in cautious laughter. Mom struggled the most with the new boundaries I established, and used to a version of me that didn't automatically accommodate everyone else's needs above my own. Thomas's family largely faded from my life, which was no great loss. Sophia maintained her relationship with them, but with clearer boundaries, no longer seeking their approval at all costs. Perhaps the most surprising outcome was my own growth. Standing up for myself that day in the restaurant had awakened something dormant within me, a sense of self-worth that had been overshadowed by my role as the family fixer. I began to recognize patterns of giving too much and receiving too little, not just with family but in friendships and work relationships as well. I started saying no when I needed to, yes when I wanted to, and discovered that healthy boundaries didn't drive away the people who truly valued me. Instead, It invited more authentic connections based on mutual respect rather than what I could do for others. A year after the wedding incident, I found myself in a much different place, surrounded by relationships that nourished rather than depleted me. Sophia and I were slowly rebuilding our bond. Different now, but with the potential to be stronger for having been broken and mindfully repaired. The lesson I learned through that painful experience wasn't that family will always let you down or that standing up for yourself means cutting people off. Rather, it was that real love, whether from family or friends, respects your worth inherently, not for what you can provide or how you fit into someone else's vision. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to say this isn't acceptable and mean it. In that moment of self-respect, you create the possibility for more authentic connections moving forward. So, if you're watching this and struggling with family relationships that feel one-sided or conditional, know that you deserve better. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's an act of self-preservation and ultimately an invitation for healthier relationships to form. Your worth isn't determined by how well you fit someone else's aesthetic or how much you can give before being drained dry. You matter exactly as you are. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Have you ever had to stand up to family for your own well-being? Drop a comment below with your experience. Subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that sometimes the family we choose can be as important as the family we're born into.